Good morning. I am Miramon John Kenneth and I will tackle today the Module 3, Lesson 3. It is the study on institutional agencies in the Philippines, the Code of Kalantiaw, Bilibid Prison, the San Ramon Prison and the Penal Farm, the Iwahig Penal Colony and Correctional Institute for Women, the New Bilibid Prison, the Davao Penal Colony, Sablayan Penal Farm, Leyte Regional Prison, Provincial Jail System, and the Public Attorney's Office, OPAW. Institutional Agency of the Philippines. It is the concise history of the Bureau of Corrections. Corrections in the Philippines started during the pre-colonial times. It was, however, organized on the individual community basis. It was only during the Spanish regime when an organized corrective services was made operational. When the Americans took over in the 1900s, the Bureau of Prisons was created under Reorganization Act of 1905 or Act Number 1407 dated November 1, 1905. The main penitentiary was the old Bilibid prison in the Arqueta Street, Manila, which was established in 1847 pursuant to Section 1708 of the Revised Administrative Code. It was formally opened by a royal decree in 1865. About 4 years later, or on August 21, 1869, the San Ramon Prison and the penal farm in Zamboanga City was established to confine Muslim rebels and recalcitrant political prisoners who opposed to the Spanish rule. The facility, which faces Hulusi, has a Spanish-inspired dormitories and originally set on 1,414 hectares sprawling estate. When the Americans took over in the 1900s, the Bureau of Prisons was created under the Reorganization Act of 1905 or Act Number 1407 dated November 1, 1905. As an agency under the Department of Commerce and Police, it is also paved the way for the re-establishment of San Ramon Prison in 1907, which was destroyed during the Spanish-American War. On January 1, 1915, the San Ramon Prison was placed under the auspices the Bureau of Prisons and started receiving prisoners from Mindanao. It produced more were transported through rail tracks, a mode which the Americans introduced to prison. Prisoners had to contend with dilapidated facilities with the cramped area. Before the reconstruction of San Ramon Prison, the Americans established in 1904 the Luhit Penal Settlement, now Iwahig Prison and Penal Farm. On a vast reservation of 28,072 hectares, it would reach an aggregate total land area of 40,000 hectares in the late 1950s, and it was located on the westernmost part of the archipelago and far from the main town to confine incorrigibles who the government had found little hope of rehabilitation. The area was expanded to 41,007 hectares by virtue of Executive Order No. 67 issued by Governor Newton Gilbert on October 15, 1912. Other penal colonies were established during the American regime. On November 27, 1929, the Correctional Institution for Women or CIW was created under Act Number 3579, while the Davao Penal Colony in southern Mindanao was opened in 1932 under the Act Numbers 3732. The CIW was founded to provide separate facilities for women offenders and to cater to their gender difference. To date, it is the lone women's prison in the country. Prisoners have to build their basic housing areas using materials available on the prison reservation. After the American regime, two more penal institutions were established. These were Sablayan Prison and the Penal Farm in Occidental Mindoro under the Proclamation Number 72 issued on September 26, 1954, in Leyte Regional Prison under the Proclamation Number 1101 issued on January 16, 1973. The Bureau of Prisons was renamed Bureau of Corrections under the new Administrative Code of 1987 issued on November 23, 1987, and Proclamation Number 495 of the President. It is one of the attached agencies under the supervision and the control of the Department of Justice. So, let's proceed to the Code of Kalantio. Article 1. You shall not kill, neither you steal, neither you shall do harm to the aged, lest you incur the danger of death. All those who infringe this order shall be condemned to death by being drowned in the river or in boiling water. Article 2. We shall obey. Let all our debts with a headman be met punctually. He who does not obey shall receive for the first time 100 lashes. If the debt is large, he shall be condemned to thrust his hand in boiling water thrice. For the second time, he shall be beaten to death. Article 3. Obey, you. Let no one have women that are very young, nor more than he can support, nor be given to excessive lust. He who does not comply with obey, and observe this order shall be condemned to swim for 3 hours for the first time and for the second time, for the beaten to death with sharp thorns. Article 4. Observe and obey. Let no one disturb the quiet of the graves. When the passing by the caves and straits where they are, give respect to them. He who does not observe this shall be killed by ants or beaten to death with thorns. Article 5. We shall obey. He who exchanges for food, let it be always done in accordance with this word. He who does not comply shall be beaten for the 1 hour. He who repents the offences shall be exposed for 1 day among ants. Article 6. We shall be obliged to revere sites that are held in respect, such as those of trees of recognized worth and other sites. He who fails to comply shall pay with months' work in gold or in honey. Article 7. They shall be put to death. He who kills trees of vulnerable appearance, who shoot arrows at night in old men and women, he who enters the houses of the headmen without permission, he who kills a shark, a strict cayman. Article 8. The slavery for a doom, a certain period of time, shall be suffered by those who steal away the women of the headmen. By him who keep ill-tempered dogs that bite in the headmen. By him who burns the fields for plunder. Article 9. All these shall be beaten for 2 days. Who sing while traveling by night, kill the Manaul. There the documents belonging to the headman are malicious liars, or who mock the dead. The Article 10. It is decreed an obligation that every mother teach secretly to her daughters matters pertaining to the last and prepare them for womanhood. Let not men be cruel, nor punish their women. When they catch them in the act of adultery, whoever shall disobey shall be killed by being cut to pieces and thrown to the caimans. Article 11. These shall be burned, who by their strength or cunning have mocked and escaped punishment, or who have killed young boys, or try to steal away the women of the elders. Article 12. These shall be drowned, all who interfere with their superiors, or their owners or masters, all those who abuse themselves through their lust, thus who destroy their anitos or idols by breaking them or throwing them down. Article 13. All these shall be exposed to ants for a half day. Who kill black cats during a new moon, or steal anything from the strips of ogorangs, however shall the object may be. Article 14. These shall be made slave for life, who have beautiful daughters, deny them to the sons of chiefs, and with bad faith hide them away. Article 15. Concerning beliefs and superstitions, they shall be beaten, who eat and disease flesh of beasts which they hold in respect, or the herb which they consider good, who would or kill the young of the manaul or white monkey. Article 16. The fingers shall be cut off of all those who break idols of wood and clay in their alangans and temples, of those who destroy the daggers of the Tagalons or break the drinking jars of the latter. Article 17. These shall be killed who profane sites where idols are kept, and sites where are buried the sacred things of their diwatas and headmen. He who performs his necessities in those places shall be burned. Article 18. Those who do not cause the rules to be obeyed If they are headmen, they shall be put to death by being stoned and crushed. And if they are agorangs, they shall be placed in the rivers to be beaten by sharks and caimans. Next is the seven institutional correction of the Philippines. The seven institutional correction of the Philippines. One is the Seven Believed Person or NBP in the Muntinlupa in Metro Manila is the main insular penitentiary designed to house the person population of the Philippines. It is maintained by the Bureau of Corrections or the Bucor under the Department of Justice. As of May 2018, the new Believed Person housed 6,877 convicted criminals. In 1940, prisoners were transferred to the National Bureau of Prison from the old Bilibid Prison, also known as Cárcel y Presidio Correccional, the Spanish for correctional jail and military prison. The remnants of the old facility was used by the city of Manila as its detention center, known as today as Manila City Jail. This is the example of the Bureau of Corrections. It is the new Bilibid Prison. The penitentiary had an initial land area of 551 hectares or 1,360 acres, but 104 hectares or 260 acres were transferred to a housing project in the Department of Justice. Additional land of the National Bureau of Prisons reservation is used to the Bureau of Corrections headquarters. During the Japanese occupation of the Philippines during the World War II, Bilibid was a prisoner of war and civilian internee camp where American soldiers and civilians were held by the Japanese. 1,200 internees and POWs were freed by the American Army on February 4, 1945. During the Battle of Manila, the government of the Philippines plans to create a regional prison in nearby Sia through a public-private partnership. The old Bilibid prison, known as a Cárcel y Presidio Correccional, Spanish correctional jail, and the military prison, is occupied a rectangular piece of land that was part of the Mahalik State in the heart of Manila. The old prison was established by the Spanish colonial government on June 25, 1865. By a royal decree, it is divided into two sections: the carcel, which could accommodate 600 inmates, and the presidio, which could hold 127 prisoners. The second, the San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm. According to the historical accounts, the San Ramon Prison was established in southern Zamboanga on August 21, 1870. Through a royal decree promulgated in 1869, it is established during the tenure of Governor-General Ramon Blanco, whose patron said the prison was named after her. The facility was originally established for persons convicted of political crimes. It is considered the oldest penal facility in the country. Prisoners in San Ramon were required to do agricultural work. During the Spanish-American War in 1898, the prisoners in San Ramon were hastily released and rebuildings destroyed. In 1907, the American administration re-established the prison farm. In 1912, General John Pershing, a chief executive of the Department of Mindanao and Sulu, classified the institution of a prison and penal colony and therein confined people sentenced by the courts under his jurisdiction. Under Pershing's supervision, several buildings with a capacity for 600 prisoners were constructed. After several years, the colony became practically self-supporting with 75,000 coconut trees, which were planted at the beginning of the Pershings, contributing to the colony's self-sufficiency. Aside from coconuts, rice, corn or papaya and other crops were also cultivated. On November 1, 1905, Organization Act Number 1407 was approved, creating the Bureau of Prisons under the Department of Commerce and Police. degrading the old believed prison, the San Ramon Penal Colony, and Iwahig Penal. The Philippine Coconut Authority took over management of coconut farm from San Ramon. In 1995, Congresswoman Maria Clara Lobregat proposed the transfer of San Ramon Prison to Bungyao Town, in the mountainous area of Zamboanga, to give way to a special economic zone. The Wahig Penal Colony. This facility was established during the American occupation. It was, however, during the Spanish regime that Puerto Princesa was designated as place where the offenders sentenced to banishment were exiled. A specific area of Puerto Princesa was selected as a site for a correctional facility. The American voluntarily carved out a prison facility in the rainforest of Puerto Princesa. The institution had for its first superintendent Lieutenant George Wolfe, a member of the U.S. Expeditionary Force, who later became the first prisons director. Governor Lucret authorized the establishment of a penal colony in the province of Palawan on November 16, 1904. This penal settlement, which originally comprised an area of 22 acres, originally served as a depository for prisoners who could not be accommodated at a believed prison in Manila. In 1906, however, the Department of Commerce and Police, which later became the Department of Public Instruction, moved to turn the institution into the center of the penal colony, supervised in accordance with the trends at the time through the department's efforts. The Philippine Commission of the United States government passed Act Number 1723 in 1907, classifying the settlement as a penal institution. This is example of next. The settlement was first visited by the attempted escapes, but under the supervision of Colonel John R. White of the Philippine Constabulary, who would become the superintendent of Iwahig in 1906, the colony became a successful settlement. A merit system was devised for the prisoners and vocational activities were offered. This included farming, fishing, forestry, and carpentry, and hospitable paramedical work. Prisoners could choose the vocational activities they wanted. In 1955, Administrative Order Number 20 was promulgated by the President and implemented by the Secretary of Justice and Secretary of Agriculture and Natural Resources. This order allowed the distribution of colony lands for cultivation by the serving colonists. The order also contained a list of qualifications for colonists who wish to apply for a lot to cultivate, the conditions of the settlers' stay in this land, loans requirements, and marketing of the settlers' produce. Lots granted did not exceed 6 hectares. In August 16, 1959, a committee was created by President Carlos P. Garcia to study the state to a national prison. Accordingly, prisoners in Awahig were divided into two groups: the settlers and the colonists. The settlers are those engaged in farming for their own benefit. They are the ones whose applications for land to cultivate have been approved. The government furnishes the land and the initial requirements for tools, dwellings, and beasts of burden. They are required to reimburse expenditures incurred for their maintenance and that of their families on the products of their farms. Upon their release from the colony, they receive whatever amount of money they have credited in their favor after deducting the obligations they have. The Iwahig is subdivided into four zones or districts: the Central Sub-Colony with an area of 14,700 hectares, Santa Lucia with 1,685 hectares, the Montebello with 8,000 hectares, and Inagawan with 13,000 hectares. Recent developments and presidential proclamations have dramatically reduced size of the personal reservations of Iwahig. Number 4. The Correctional Institution for Women or CIW. In a report dated January 22, 1959, submitted to a committee created by Administrative Order Number 287 by the President of the Philippines, it was noted that before a separate building was constructed especially for women prisoners, all female convicts were confirmed at the old private prisons on the Ascaraga Street, Manila. The male prisoners were confined in dormitories near the women's quarters. Because of these conditions, vocational activities of the women prisoners were limited to embroidery. When they became ill, the women were confined in a separate building, which served as a hospital, with nurses and prison physicians. When women prisoners needed surgery, they were operated on a Bilibid prison. After the operation, they were transferred to the infirmary for convalescence. Prison authorities were aware of the conditions that the women prisoners had to endure. Consequently, the transfer of the women to a separate site became inevitable. After a serious negotiations headed by the prison director Ramon Victorio, the Philippine Legislature passed Public Act No. 3579 in November 1929. It authorized the transfer of all women inmates to a building in Milford Vale at the Mandaluyong Rizal and appropriate 60,000 for the move. This is example of the CIW. On February 14, 1931, the women prisoners were transferred from the old Bilibid prison to the building specially constructed for them. Its old name, Women's Prison, was changed to the Correctional Institution for Women. This was in keeping with the emerging trends in penology, which emphasized correction rather than punishment. Convicts were brought back into the social mainstream, adjusted and rehabilitated with a better outlook in life. The CIW, according to the Senate report, occupied 18 hectares. The original structure was one-story building which housed the office, the brigade's mess hall, kitchen, chapel, and infirmary bathrooms and employees' restrooms. The building was a central courtyard with trees and flowering plants. The prisoners' vocational activities were expanded to include poultry and piggery, as well as cultivation of crops, flowers, and fruits. Living quarters of the institution's employees were later constructed in the compound. During the Japanese occupation, the CCIW, despite a drastic reduction in the number of its employees, continued with its work. A number of female military prisoners were also confined in the institution. They were later freed by the U.S. Army. After the war, the CW resumed its normal operations. Weekly catechism classes were introduced. A dental clinic was built. Local telephones were installed in the guards' quarters. The Bureau of Public Works made major repairs to the main building, and workshop and infirmary were constructed for the inmates' use. The infirmary during that time could accommodate around 16 patients. In 2000, a new four-story building was constructed by the Department of Public Works within the grounds of CIW. It is the growing congestion in the facility. The CIW, with a capacity for only 200 inmates, had accommodated 1,000 inmates. The Davao Penal Colony. The Davao Penal Colony is the first penal settlement founded and organized under the Filipino administration. The settlement, which originally had an area of approximately 30,000 hectares, in the districts of Panabo and Tatagum, Davao del Norte, was formally established on January 21, 1932 by a virtue act of number 3732. This act authorized the Governor-General to release or sell the lands, buildings, and improvements in San Ramon Prison and Iwahig Prison in Penal Colony. It also granted authority to the Secretary of the Justice to establish a new prison in Penal Colony in a suitable public land. A budget of 500,000 pesos was allocated. Several committees were created to pick a suitable site for a penal settlement. In accordance with the recommendation of those committees, Governor Dwight Davis signed Proclamation No. 4114 on October 17, 1931, which should serve as site for the penal colony in Dawa Province in Mindanao. The site offered ideal conditions for agricultural activities. During World War II, the colony was converted into a concentration camp where more than 1,000 Japanese internees were committed by the Philippine-American Armed Forces. The Japanese were treated in accordance with the orders of the American commanding officer. This is the Davao Penal Colony. In December 20, 1941, the Japanese Imperial Forces attacked Davao. The colony was among the establishments taken over by the invading army. The entire settlement was thrown into confusion and a great number of prisoners escaped. Normal operations were inevitably disturbed. November 8, 1943, a representative of Director of Persons transferred the colony and its properties to the Japanese authorities. The remaining colony employees, their families, and the inmates evacuated to Iwahig, where they organized the Davao Penal Colony and Inagawan Sub-Colony, or Palawan. The organization of the colony and exile was authorized by the virtue of Memorandum Order No. 60, dated June 28, 1943, and signed by the Director of Presence. After the liberation of the Philippines, the colony in exile in Palawan returned to its old site in Davao. A great deal of rebuilding and repair had to be done because the war had almost completely destroyed the colony. Number 6, the Sablayan Prison and Penal Farm. Near of the Manila than other penal colonies, the Sablayan Penal Colony is located in Occidental Mindoro and relatively new, established on September 6, 1954 by virtue of Presidential Proclamation Number 72. The penal colony has a total land area of approximately 16,190 hectares. Persons records show that the first colonists and the Blues arrived in Sablayan on January 15, 1955. Since the several buildings have been constructed, including the colony's dormitories, employees' quarters, guardhouse, schoolhouse, chapel, recreational hall, and post exchange. This is a picture of the Sablayan Prison and Penal Farm. Three sub-colonies were later organized. One is reservation, which is day remains part of the protected rainforest. Another is in a coastal area. The third was used by the national government as a location site for refugees from the eruption of Mount Pinatubo eruption in 1991. The Sablayan Prison is a facility where prisoners from NDP are brought for decongestion purposes. It follows the same colony standards as the other penal farms. 7. The Leyte Regional Prison. The Leyte Regional Prison is situated in Abuyog, Southern Leyte, was established a year after the declaration of martial law in 1972 by virtue of Presidential Decree Number 28. While its penitencia and institutional plan were almost ideal, lack of funds made the prison unable to realize its full potential. Its facilities are often below par compared with those established penal farms. This is a picture of the Leyte Regional Prison in the Buyog, Leyte. The LRP has an inmate capacity of 500 inmates. It follows the same agricultural format as the main correctional program, in addition to some rehabilitation activities. The prison admits convicted offenders from Region 6 and from the National Penitentiary in Muntinlupa. Provincial Jail System for Assignment. Provincial Attorney's Provincial Attorney's Office of PAO is attached agency of the Department of Justice, which provides indigent litigants free legal assistance. The PAO shall be an independent and autonomous office but attached to the Department of Justice in accordance with Section 38, Chapter 7 of Book 4 of this Code for purposes of policy and program coordination. The Public Attorney's Office shall be the principal law office in the government is extending free legal assistance to indigent persons in criminal, civil, labor, administrative, and other quasi-judicial cases. The powers and functions of the PAO. The functions of the PAO is they shall independently discharge its mandate to render free of charge legal representation, assistance and counseling to the indigent persons in criminal, civil, labor, administrative, and other quasi-judicial cases. In the exigency of the service, the PAO may be called upon by proper government authorities to render such service to the other persons, subject to existing laws, rules, and regulations. The mission of the PAO. The Public Attorney's Office exists to provide indigent litigants, the oppressed and marginalized and underprivileged members of the society free access to courts, judicial and quasi-judicial agencies by rendering legal services, counseling, and assistance in consonance with the constitutional mandate that free access to courts shall not be denied to any person by reason of poverty, in order to ensure the rule of law, truth, and social justice as components of the country's sustainable development. Division. A government agency that is God-centered and dynamic bureaucracy that is responsive to the ever-growing legal needs of the judges and the press, led by highly competent, world-class, development-oriented, honest, dedicated, and nationalistic leaders and lawyers. Next is the Republic Act Number 10575, an act setting the Bureau of Corrections Bucor and providing funds therefore. Be it enacted by the Senate in the House of Representatives of the Philippines and Congress assembled. The Section 1 of the Republic Act 10575. Section 1 short title. This act shall be known as the Bureau of Corrections Act of 2013. Section 2. Declaration of Policy. It is the policy of the state to promote the general welfare and to safeguard the basic rights of every prisoner incarcerated in our national penitentiary. Thus, it also recognizes the responsibility of the state to certain government capability aimed towards the institutionalizations of the highly efficient and competent correctional services. Towards this end, the state shall provide for the modernization, professionalization, and structuring of the Bureau of Congress Corrections Bureau by upgrading its facilities, increasing the number of its personnel, upgrading the level of qualifications of their personnel, and standardizing their base pay, retirement, and other benefits, in making it at a par with the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology or BGMP. Number 3. Definition of terms. A. Safekeeping, which is the constitutional component of the Bureau's represent correction system. They shall refer to the act that ensures the public, including families of inmates and their victims, that national inmates are provided with their basic needs, completely incapacitated from further committing criminal acts, and have been totally cut off from their criminal networks or contracts in the free society. While serving sentences inside the premises of the National Penitentiary, this act also includes protection against legal organized armed groups which have capacity of launching an attack on any person camp of the National Penitentiary to rescue their convicted comrade or to forcibly amass firearms issued to prison guards. B. Reformation, which is a rehabilitation component of the Bureau's represent correction system. They shall refer to the acts which ensure the public, including families of inmates and their victims, that released national inmates are no longer harmful to the community by becoming reformed individuals prepared to live normal and productive life upon reintegration to the mainstream society. Section 4. The mandates of the Bureau of Corrections. The Bureau shall be in charge of safekeeping and instituting reformation programs for to national inmates that sentenced to more than 3 years. A. Safekeeping of national inmates. The safekeeping of inmates shall include decent provision of quarters, food, water, and clothing in compliance with established United Nations standards. The security of the inmates shall be undertaken by the custodial force consisting of corrections officers with a ranking system and salary grades similar to its counterpart in the BGMP. B. Reformation of national inmates. The reformation of programs which will be instituted by the Bureau for the inmates shall be the following. 1. The Moral and Spiritual Program. 2. Education and Training Program. 3. Work and Livelihood Program. 4. Sports and Recreational Program. 5. Health and Welfare Program. 6. The Behavior Modification Program that includes therapeutic community. C. The reformation of programs shall be undertaken by the professional reformation personnel, consisting the corrections technical offices with ranking system and salary grades similar to the corrections offices. 1. Corrections technical officers are personnel who employed in the implementation of reformation programs, and those personnel whose nature of work requires proximate or direct contact with the inmates. Corrections technical officers include priests, evangelists, pastors and teachers, instructors, professors, vocational placement officers, librarians, guidance counselors, physicians, nurses, medical technologists, pharmacists, dentists, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, sociologists, social workers, engineers, electricians, agriculturists, veterinarians, lawyers, and similar professional skills relevant to the implementation of inmate remission programs. Section 5. Operations of the Bureau of Corrections. The Bureau shall operate with a directoral structure. It shall undertake reception of inmates through its Directorate for Reception and Diagnostics (DRD). Formerly Reception and Diagnostic Center or IDC provide basic needs and security through its Security and Operations Directorates, administer reformation programs through its Reformation Directorates, and prepare inmates for reintegration to mainstream society through its Directorate for External Relations (ODER), formerly External Relations Division (ERD). Aside from those born of the provisions under Rule 8, Part 1, Rules of General Application of the United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for the Treatment of Prisoners, in that the existing regulation of the Bucor and security classification, maximum, medium, and minimum security risk. Inmates shall be internally classified by the DRD, shall also be internally classified by the DRD, and segregated according to crimes and committed based on the related penal code such as crime against persons, crime against properties, crime against chastity, so on and so forth, as well as by the other related special laws, custom, and immigration laws. From the DRD, the custodial force and information personnel of the respective security institution COMS shall be in charge for the security and implementation of the recommended inmate for reformation program of which in every inmate while serving sentence respectively. The Directorate for the External Relations, the DER, shall be responsible for the pre-release and post-release programs of the inmates due for release. The DER shall also classify inmates according to skills acquired for referral and endorsement to appropriate companies or corporations participating in the Bucor on the job training programs and for newly reformed inmates. The DER shall also evaluate, classify, and apply necessary programs to inmates for readiness to join the mainstream society upon release. Apart from handling inmates, the Bucor shall administratively operate like a standard government agency through its administrative directorates with internal control and internal audit units. G. The Bucor shall employ full computerization in the build-up, maintenance, and transmittal of necessary inmate records to all its prison and penal farms and other recipient agencies, the Board of Pardons and Parole. The Section 6 of Land, the Bureau of Corrections. A. Aside from administrative purposes, all Bucor lands shall be used for inmate security, information and programs and as means to promote sustainability both for income and non-income, generating programs with or without partnership among non-government organizations, civic organizations, or other government entities. B. As a way to maximize its assets value for effective and extensive reformation, corrections programs for national inmates, the Bucor shall have the absolute authority to design, formulate, and implement land use development plans and policies. The Bucor may propose additional penal farms as may be necessary possible aside from its existing 7 prison and penal farms to decongest existing penal institutions and accommodate the increasing number of inmates committed to the agency. D. All Bucor lands shall have a certificate of title registered under its name. Section 7. The facilities of the Bureau of Corrections, the Bucor shall operate with standard and uniform design of prison facilities, reformation facilities, and administrative facilities through all the operating prison and penal farms, such as the following: dormitory, B. Administration building, C. Perimeter and security fences, D. Hospital or infirmary, D. Recreation multipurpose hall, F. Training lecture center, G. Workshop facility, H. Mess hall or kitchen, I. Visiting area, J. Water tank and pump, K. Reception and diagnostic center, and I. And L. Service personnel facilities. The Section 8, Supervision of the Bureau of Corrections, the Department of Justice (DOJ), having the Bucor as a line bureau and a constituent unit, shall maintain a relationship of administrative supervision with the letter as defined under Section 38, Chapter 7, Book 4 of Executive Number 292, Administrative Code of 1987, except that the DOJ shall retain authority over the power to review, reverse, revise, or modify decisions of the Bureau in the exercise of its regulatory or quasi-judicial functions. Section 9. The organization and key position of the Bureau of Corrections. A. The Bureau shall be headed by the director who shall be assisted by three, the deputy directors, and one for administration, and one for security and operations, and one for the reformation, all of the whom shall be appointed by the President upon and recommendation of the Secretary of the DOJ, provided that the Director and the Deputy Directors of the Bureau shall serve a term of duty to exceed 6 years from the date of appointment, provided further that in times of war or other national emergency declared by the Congress, the President may extend such tour of duty. B. The head of the Bureau with the rank of Undersecretary shall have the position entitled Director General of Corrections. The second officers in command of the Bureau with the rank of Assistant Secretary shall have the position and the title of the Deputy Directors of Corrections. The third officer in the command of the Bureau with the rank of Chief Superintendent shall have the position and the title of Corrections and Chief Superintendent. The fourth officer in the command of the Bureau with the rank of Senior Superintendent shall have the position and the title of Corrections Senior Superintendent. The fifth officer at the command of the Bureau with the rank of Superintendent shall have the position of the title of Corrections Superintendent. C. The Department of the Budget and the Management of DBM shall rationalize its existing organization, structure, and staffing pattern in the Bureau in accordance with the provisions of the Act and relevant compensation and classification laws, rules, and regulations. Section 10. Increase of personnel. The Bureau shall maintain the custodial personnel to inmate ratio of 1:7, and reformation personnel and to inmate ratios to 1:24. Hence, it is authorized to increase its manpower to meet such ratio and may continue to increase personnel per percentage rate increase of committed inmates annually as or the needs arise. Section 11. Professionalization and upgrading of qualification standards in the appointment of the Bureau personnel. A. No person shall be appointed as a personnel of the Bureau unless one possesses the following minimum qualifications. 1. A citizen of the Republic of the Philippines. 2. A person of a good moral character. 3. Must have passed the psychiatric, psychological, drug, and physical tests for the purpose of determining his or her physical and mental health. 4. Must possess a baccalaureate degree from a recognized learning institution. 5. Must possess the appropriate civil service eligibility. 6. Must not have been dishonorably discharged or dismissed for cause from previous employment. 7. Must not have been convicted by the final judgment of an offense or a crime involving moral turpitude. And 8. Must be at least 1 meter and 62 centimeters in height for male and 1 meter and 57 centimeters for female, provided that a waiver for height and age requirements may be granted to applicants belonging to the cultural communities, provided further that a new applicant must not be less than 21 or more than 40 years of age, except for this particular provision. The above enumerated qualifications shall be continuing in character, and the absence of any one of them at any given time shall be ground for separation or retirement from the service. B. After the lapse of the period of the satisfaction of a specific requirement, incumbent personnel of the Bureau who fail to satisfy any of the requirements enumerated under this section shall be separated from the service if they are below 50 years of age and have served in the government for at least 20 years. Or third, if they are 50 years and above and have served in the government for at least 20 years without prejudice. In other case of payment of benefits, they may be entitled under existing laws. C. For sustained professionalism, the service of the Bureau is directed to the conduct study for feasible establishment of the Philippine Corrections Academy, patterned after the Philippine National Police Academy or PNP of the Philippine National Police or the PNP in the Philippine Military Academy or the PMA, the Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP or its commissioned officers. D. The Bucor shall continue training its personnel through its personnel training school, which shall be renamed as Corrections Training School Institute patterned after the BGMP's Jail National Training Institute or GNTI, the Bureau of the Fire National Training Institute or FNTI, and the PNP's National Training Institute of PNTI. Section 12. Appointment of personnel to the Bucor. The appointment of the Bucor shall be effected in the following manner. A. Corrections Officer 1 is the Corrections Chief Superintendent is appointed by the Director General of Corrections and attested with the Civil Service Commission of CSC. And B. Director General of the Corrections and Deputy Director of the Corrections appointed by the President upon the recommendation of the Secretary of the DOJ, with the proper endorsement with the Chairman of the CSC. Section 13. Lateral entry of the officer into the Bucor. In general, all original appointments of the officers in the Bucor shall commence with the rank of Corrections Inspector, wherein applicants for lateral entry into the Bucor shall include all those with highly specialized and technical qualifications such as, but not limited to, civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, chemical engineers, chemists, architects, criminologists, certified public accountants, nurses, physical therapists, dentists, social workers, psychologists, sociologists, guidance counselors, and teachers. Doctors of the medicine, members of the Philippine Bar, and chaplains shall be appointed to the rank of the corrections of senior inspector in the particular clinical service. Section 14. The professionalization and upgrading of qualification standards in the designation of personnel of the Bucor to key positions. A. No person shall be designated the following key positions of the Bucor unless one has met the qualifications provided therein. 1. Subclinical supervisor should have the rank of senior inspector who must have finished at least second year Bachelor of Laws or earned at least 12 units in a master's degree program in management, public administration, public safety, criminology, penology, sociology, national security administration, defense studies, or other related disciplines from a recognized institution from a learning and must have satisfactorily passed the necessary training or career courses for such positions as may be established by the Bucor. 2. Cleaning Assistant Superintendent should have the rank of the Chief Inspector who must have finished at least second year Bachelor of Laws or earned at least 24 units in the master's degree program in management, public administration, public safety, criminology, penology, sociology, national security administration, defense studies, or other related disciplines from a recognized institution of learning and must have satisfactorily passed the necessary training or career courses for such position as may be established by the Bucor. 3. Colony Superintendent should have the rank of Superintendent who must have graduated Bachelor of Laws or holder a master's degree in management, public administration, public safety, criminology, penology, sociology, national security, administration, defense studies, or other related disciplines from a recognized institution of learning. It must have satisfactorily passed the necessary training or career courses for such position as may be established by the Bucor, provided that in person in the penal farms with an inmate population of 2,000 but below 3,000, the colony superintendent shall have the rank and qualification of the colony senior superintendent. And 4. Regional superintendent should have the rank of senior superintendent or chief superintendent, who must be a graduate of Bachelor of Laws or a holder of a master's degree in the management of public administration, public safety, criminology, penology, sociology, national security administration, defense studies, or other related disciplines from a recognized institution of learning and must have satisfactorily passed the necessary training or career courses for such positions as may be established by the Bucor, provided that in prison in the penal farms with an inmate population of 3,000 but below 5,000, the regional superintendent shall have the rank and qualification of the colony senior superintendent. Provided further that in person in penal farms in the inmate population of over 5,000, the regional superintendent shall have the rank and qualification of a chief superintendent. And any personnel of the Bucor who is currently occupying such position but lacks any of the qualifications mentioned therein shall be given 5 years to comply with the requirements, otherwise the personnel shall be relieved of the position.